Hey baby, I hear those blues are calling. It's time for the Frasier on Frasier podcast. Welcome, hello. I am your host, Adam Frasier. With me is Wes Corwin. How you doing, Wes?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. We got a funny episode finally.
We got to goof them up.
Yeah, we've been Frasier's been dealing with some heavy stuff lately, so it's nice that we kind of get a more lighthearted episode. Specifically, we're talking about season 1, episode 13. Guess who's coming to breakfast?
Guess who's coming to breakfast?
Which alternative title for this episode is Martin Has Sex.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a big event in this episode.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole. It's pretty much the whole episode. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, we haven't seen we watched the episode separately this week.
We did, so we didn't get to experience it in real time. I thought it was a fun one. I thought it was real goofy. I appreciate Frasier not handling it and then being overly accepting of it in a very public setting, in a way that would be broadcast to his listener base, of which Martin's sexual partner would be privy to and was humiliated, and it just kind of continues to spiral in a way where Frasier's best efforts are thwarted by the fact that he doesn't understand just how much free time his listenership has on his back, and they will get to it. But this was a fun episode where Frasier would try to solve a problem and would frequently make it worse.
I mean, I think this episode pretty much confirms that Frasier's listening base are just elderly white people.
Yeah, you definitely see that in the scene that we're going to talk
about. So, yeah, we'll get into the episode. It starts off pretty strongly with Frasier inciting violence against a child.
Right. Played by Elijah Wood.
Yeah, and which is weird, because at this point, like, I mean, we know Elijah Wood because, Lord of the Rings and stuff, but, like, this is, what, 1994 we're in right now? This is
93, 94, so he must have been... Yeah, I knew it. Okay, so he could have been filming The Adventures of Huck Finn. I think it's much more likely he was filming The Good Son, that horror movie with Macaulay Culkin, where Macaulay Culkin is, like, a sociopath child.
So it's weird that they got Elijah Wood then, because it's like,
why wouldn't you get Macaulay Culkin?
What was he known for? What was he known for? Was he known for his role in Back to the Future Part 2? Was that like? That's a pretty standout moment. I will give you, but I don't. Did the producers just say, "Hey, we got the kid from Back to the Future Part 2.
Yay! We got the kid from Radio Flyer in the studio. Let's have him in for a Frasier. Let's do some Frasier stuff." It could have been. Well, let's see. Frasier season 1. I want to figure out this timeline before we go any further. Frasier season 1 was released 93 to 94. So it's possible. Let's see. Good Son was released September of 93. So it would have been out, so it's very possible he could have been filming North, which I think could have been a movie that people thought would be better than it was, since it was directed by Rob Reiner and had, like, a star-studded cast. They might have been like, oh, let's get him in, before he blows up from North.
I mean, conceivably, yeah, he could have been off doing other things, and there's just filmed a quick voiceover for Frasier, but
yes,
we're talking too much about Elijah Wood.
Okay.
So Frasier, he ends the radio program. It's another nice day. He talks to Roz in the booth, who is preparing for her date with.
I believe, if I do want to state, I believe this is the first time we've seen Roz, like, non-ironically enjoy Frasier's show. She's typically bored, or she's laughing at him messing up. This is the first time, like, he handles a caller really well.
Are you talking about Elijah Wood? Or are you talking about like just the callers in general in this episode?
Because
I did notice that about this episode
in the first scene, and I will acknowledge alongside you that the call ends with him instead of I believe Melania Trump said be best and don't bully, and Frasier is encouraging Ethan's classmates, Ethan played by Elijah Wood, to pile outside of his house and not leave until because he can't stay in there forever, is what Frasier says. But Roz seems to enjoy that at a level she has not enjoyed being his producer in the past. So it seems like Frasier's starting to pick up some ability as a radio host.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of maybe Roz is rubbing off on Frasier. That tracks with me.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, she's getting ready for a date, and she is dating Noel Shimsky, who is one of my favorite side characters in this whole show.
Noel the Mole.
If only because he is also a massive Star Trek fan.
Yeah, here's the thing, and again, it's 94. I understand Star Trek was a thing at one point to be ashamed of. It seems like Roz is explaining that she's gone out with superficial guys, kind of one and done, sort of the Tinder culture, but in 94, where she's just been cycling through a series of disappointing men, and she's found this guy that's a little bit more substantial, has like a little bit more under the mental hood, has a little bit more intelligence, and she would think that Frasier would be supportive, and Frasier dismisses it as like, does he still have an autographed picture of Captain Kirk in his cubicle? Which, fine, but I mean, I feel like being high-cultured and being nerdy are they're the exact same thing, just you're spending boatloads of money on things very few people care about. What's the difference between, like, high art and, like, putting those erotic African things, the pottery or whatever Frasier continues to reference that he has in his bathroom that is erotic and from Africa, and having a picture of Captain Kirk that William Shatner signed.
I mean,
except for the cultural
you're
thing.
Right. There is not much difference between having a signed autograph of Captain Kirk and an expensive piece of artwork that was handcrafted by someone.
I feel like they're the same thing, and
I see where you're coming from. No, I mean, nerd culture has come a long way. So I feel like Noel would definitely. If the show was made today, I don't think Noel would get as much flack as he does for maybe being a Star Trek fan. No. But he's played by Patrick Kerr, very talented actor. He actually was in an episode of Star Trek, if I'm not mistaken. He was in an episode of Voyager, where he played an alien. I don't remember what the episode was about, though. Something with Janeway and holograms. She has like a... At one point, Janeway, like, she started going into like a holographic program where she was like the maid of like this old Victorian like mansion, and she was like the maid to these children and this dour old man that was their father, and something happened with that.
Fascinating.
But yeah, we meet Noel Shimsky, who is going to play. He was going to be a reoccurring character in the show.
Oh, good.
And so I'm looking forward to see more of him. But we move to later. It's Frasier's apartment. Daphne is in the kitchen, and Niles kind of walks in.
Yeah.
We're getting another Niles and Daphne scene.
A little bit of Niles and Daphne exchange. Niles insists on hanging out with her because he's always been like a kitchen person.
Which he immediately knocks something over to sort of like the indicator that he's probably lying. He's just doing this, again, just to kind of be near Daphne. Right. We've gotten little sprinkles of this throughout the entire season.
Yes. One of the more it's an interesting bit of physical comedy. David Hyde Pierce has frequently been doing a lot of verbal, quick-witted stuff. It's fun to watch him do some Dick Van Dyke slapstick, as is the bit where he can't quite boost himself on the counter, and when he puts a little bit more effort into it, slams his head against the ceiling. Very fun.
David Hyde Pierce, I will say this, and we'll see plenty more examples of this throughout the series, but he is very talented at physical comedy, I feel. Perhaps more so than any other character on this show.
I believe that.
So yeah, he hits his head on like the top of the stove or whatever that chimney thing they have above the stove is. He falls over, and of course Daphne's like tending to him, and he doesn't want to get off the floor because of course that's sort of a nice position for him to be in.
Yes.
But Frasier of course walks in and kind of ruins it. So Frasier asks Niles to, I guess, take their father out for an evening because he has plans, perhaps involving a lady.
Right.
A lady friend.
Hoping to get some lady friend interaction.
Hoping to get lucky. And as Niles refers to it. Right. Because with him and Maris, it's always a matter of being lucky.
It requires a certain amount of luck and finesse. It
requires like a very good roll of the dice.
Yep. So Martin gets home and he is invited by Niles. Hey, do you want to come over and hang out with Maris and I and have dinner? And Martin's
like, go someplace where the onion rings are as big as your head.
Which that's a real sale for Martin, who, as we know, is a big fan of the lumber mill and deals.
That's
a
sale for me.
If it doesn't meet a certain criteria, you get it for free. Is kind of Martin's major demographic.
Exactly.
Really.
So this is supposed to tempt him, but it doesn't, because as Martin informs Frasier and company, he actually has a date. Which is a kind of a nice little 180. He's got a date with a woman. What's her name? Elaine.
It is Elaine.
Yeah. So from their building. So. He's going to go on a date with Elaine. Frasier suggests they play canasta and watch like old people stuff, like they're going to watch a documentary on PBS about like
swing bands of the 30s and 40s. To which Martin replies, "I think we'll just split a bowl of cream corn, run a little Liniment on each other's joints, and then fall asleep drooling on the couch." Just old people stuff, and that closes the scene.
Yeah. We cut to, I guess, a couple days later. It's the night after Martin's big date, and Frasier's in the kitchen. Daphne's cooking some breakfast. We hear about the show that Frasier took Daphne to the previous night. We went to see some experimental theater. And
Frasier's like,
I don't know if have you ever seen any experimental theater, Wes?
I've seen improv comedy, which is like an experimental comedy, and just like improv, this show sounded bad.
It does sound. I mean, this show in particular sounds. Well, a man apparently walks in at some point completely naked,
carrying
a briefcase.
Yeah.
And then Frasier theorizes this means that this was meant to symbolize that he packed too much.
I see. I don't know what that means.
No, it's because he's naked. He packed all of his clothes into the briefcase.
See, this show's too...
Did you not get that?
This show's too smart for me. So he packed the clothes he was wearing into the suitcase.
Yes,
I suppose... Yeah.
That's the joke.jpg.
That checks out. I
thought it was one of the best jokes of the episode.
No, now it makes sense. Now I get it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fine, Mr. Comedian. Frasier or Daphne's making a traditional English breakfast. Martin walks in. Frasier kind of asks him about previous night, his big date with Elaine. At which point Elaine walks in, who was apparently spent the night over in Frasier's house. And as we know, that can only mean one thing.
They They had a sleepover and they watched all the Star Wars movies.
They had sex, Wes.
Oh man,
I'm not going to explain this entire Did you watch it?
I did watch the episode. I just didn't get a lot of the finities.
Okay, well that is the implication.
That
and
does
of course,
that explains the whole people laughing at what Frasier's saying.
Awkwardness.
Because at first I thought, like, why is he saying these things when they just watched Star Wars the night before? But clearly, now that they had sex, all these lines about, like, he's wanted to have you for a long time, and hot buns, and did you play games? Oh, board game, like, all of these very quick fire lines. They make a lot more sense now that they had sex. I thought they got wrapped up in Empire Strikes Back.
I mean, they could have, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it was.
We don't know what Martin keeps on in the background while he's in the midst of.
Nor should we.
Should we?
But yes, the implication is that Martin slept with this woman, and it leads to Frasier sort of tripping over himself with all of these sort of unintentional innuendos.
Double meanings, a lot of turns of phrase, very rapid fire, quickly.
Leads to a very awkward breakfast, and Eileen sort of excuses herself. Or Elaine, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep calling her Eileen or Elaine or whatever.
Elaine. Morris.
Elaine.
So
she excuses herself.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's a line where because Daphne made bangers, which is a British term for sausage.
In the intro of like Daphne making breakfast that she's decided to make a traditional British breakfast. And she makes a point to say, we have eggs, bangers, or as you call them, sausage, and then
thank God for that, because else we would have had no idea what she was talking about.
No idea what she was talking about.
So yeah, it's sort of the tipping point of the breakfast, comedy scene where Frasier offers Elaine a banger, but he just says banger, and then and that's like
he says banger, Dad, which is very necessary for the line to work. If he had said banger, Elaine, that would be confusing. But he said banger, Dad, as if to say you should bang her, Dad, Father. Which that's where that comes in.
So Frasier, after Elaine leaves, he quips.
Frasier just about forces this woman out of his home with this series of unintentional double meanings until she is so bashful and baffled that she has to exit.
Right. And he says to Daphne, "Oh, you couldn't have served bacon." And Daphne says, "Well, just be thankful I didn't make Toad in a hole." Which is also a very suggestive name,
right?
It was such a weirdly named dish. I had to look it up.
Right.
It is apparently, just sausage.
Yeah.
In in sort of a Yorkshire pudding batter. Served with onion gravy and vegetables.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures. It looks like a quiche that has like full length sausages in like a quiche or an omelet, essentially.
Right, and it's weird because I guess there are two different versions of it. The American version is, I guess, basically just eggs in the nest, because that's what I'm seeing here on this page. Is just we've got one picture where it's the sausage in the dish, and it's sort of a casserole looking thing, and then we have we just have someone who made eggs in a nest and decided to call it Toad in a Hole.
That's interesting, because I recall, and if you watched V for Vendetta starring Hugo Weaving, they called American Toad in the Hole is apparently V for Vendetta country. What is it? Eggy in the Basket.
I thought you were going to point out the fact that in I think the first episode of the show that we're talking about, Wes,
Frasier.
They mention that. They mention eggs in a nest is like the Crane family specialty.
Oh no, that would be more relevant to our immediate interest. Okay, yeah. So just sort of an establishing dish everybody here's familiar with it, but they call it different things. I see. That's a good point, Adam. No, I wanted to talk about V for Vendetta for a second.
Well, I shouldn't stop you.
Okay.
I haven't seen V for Vendetta in a very long time.
It is a fill. You can't deny that. It's got Stephen Fry in it.
Truly a film of the cinema. So we move on from the embarrassing breakfast.
Yes.
And we pick up Frasier's in his doing his radio show. He gets a caller by the name of Marianne.
Who's played by Piper Laurie. Do you know what she's famous for?
She's famous for playing the mother in Carrie.
She was Carrie's mom, her abusive, they're all going to laugh at you that Adam Sandler does the impression.
I can see your dirty pillows.
Yes, those things.
Yeah, and it's fitting that they got her because, of course, in this episode, she's playing a woman who's concerned about her daughter having her adult daughter coming home with her boyfriend and them not sleeping in the same room together. So she calls Frasier for advice on that, and Frasier talks about how he has just experienced a moment where he has had trouble sort of accepting the fact that his father is, an adult who has sex with Elaine.
He refers to sex as that old bugaboo, which is interesting.
It's a it was a fun name. It's fun to say bugaboo.
It is. It is, in fact.
So, he basically spills, he tells everybody in Seattle about Elaine and Martin and their night together, which of course Frasier at this moment doesn't really see anything wrong with that, but because he thinks it's just a good way to illustrate his point about that people have a tendency to sort of think about people we have a tendency to think of people as sort of locked into one sort of stage in their life. So, if you're a parent, you have a hard time seeing your kids as an adult because, of course, you're their parent and you want to sort of them to be kids forever. But, so I'm just catching up.
Okay, let's see, where were we? This doesn't help, by the way, this whole thing Frasier says about, hey, you should, the part of being adult is sexuality, because Carrie's mom, Margaret, immediately starts to hear noises from the guest room and goes to, I guess, start to interrupt it. And presumably, if her daughter in Frasier doesn't have sex soon, she will develop psychic powers and kill everyone in Seattle. And that's something to just be aware of. That's just something that might come up in a future episode.
Yeah, I will say this. This isn't the last time Piper Laurie is going to be seen in the Frasier
That's
in the Frasier episode.
Wonderful.
Seen or heard. There definitely will be a Carrie Frasier crossover at some point.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Niles gets he gets prom king
and then they dump the blood on
it. Blood on
the whole.
And then Niles uses his psychic powers to kill everybody.
I can't wait. I'm excited for it. I hope that's the season finale. And I didn't relate at all with what happens after the call, where Noel comes in and is like, "Hey, I had a great date. Roz is pretty polite," and he decided after their date to make her a spice rack. So he's, I don't know what that.
It's very, very, very specific item to make someone after a date.
He's crafty. He's thinking of her. He clearly has access to woodworking tools. If he had if he had a plaid shirt, it would come off like he was like a lumberjack, like a woodsman. But it is apparently he's a nerd just because he made her a spice rack. I don't enjoy how we're treating Noel the mole. I think what a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he leaves and he does the
live long
and prosper
from the original series, which I mean maybe like I don't. This is what at this point TNG is out. Like I get if someone were irritating about TNG and said it wasn't as good as the original and like wouldn't watch it, maybe that would be obnoxious and maybe I wouldn't be into that. But otherwise, yeah, 1987. There was definitely TNG to enjoy at the same time frame.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So, and by that time, I think it had grown to be somewhat of a success. People enjoyed it.
Yeah.
A lot of people were. We're getting off track, but yeah, a lot of people going into Star Trek, including the people involved with Star Trek, like Brent Spinner and Patrick Stewart, didn't think it was going to go beyond like the first season.
Right. Yes. Because we can't talk about this for very long because we're Adam, we're in the middle of talking about Frasier, but I remember
but there's so much crossover.
There's a lot of crossover, and
that's the point I've been trying to make throughout all these episodes we've been doing. There's a lot of crossover between the Star Trek and the Frasier Cheers universe.
Frasier, yeah. I do recall reading Will Wheaton, because he used to recap season 1 episodes, and he pointed out just how many season 1 episodes were like reduxes and cover versions of original series episodes with just different actors, and it's like that's a weird choice.
And a lot of them were done worse.
Yeah, not as well.
If season 1 I don't really blame a lot of people for especially the people involved in I don't like Denise Crosby, who played who was in Star Trek.
Yeah.
She was Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
She left Star Trek during its first season because I'm pretty sure she didn't have much faith in it, and she went on to make some great films, such as Pet Sematary, and
Pet Sematary. Did you say did you say Pet Sematary?
Pet Sematary.
Hold on.
There's more here. I'm sorry.
Did you say?
Oh, Pet Sematary.
She was in Jackie Brown in an uncredited role.
Jackie Brown, Pumpkin Man.
She was. Let's not talk about Pumpkin Man. Let's get back to the Frasier. Let's Frasier it up.
All right.
So he gets back. Let's get back to home, which I guess is all in part of the same scene. Usually they have like a title card to transition. He just gets back to home, and Daphne and Martin are... Martin is talking about how he's not happy. Frasier would say something like that. Daphne points out the fact when Martin gets angry, his ears turn red. Frasier gets home, and they start to have a little bit of a fight because Martin is a little embarrassed that his sex life was put out on public AM radio, where most people are spending their time listening, because this is the 90s. AM radio, it's the most popular way to get information out.
Yeah, people just gather around the radio and just listen and hear what's on.
Yep.
So Frasier reacts to Martin being mad at him. He's like, "Oh, I was flattering you, you old man. It's no big deal. It's the 90s. It's the 90s. That's what everyone says in the 90s. It's the 90s.
It's the 90s," he says. He also okay, I will acknowledge that I did understand this bit of innuendo. Frasier calls Martin an old swordsman, and I was like, that's very phallic. Okay. I don't know if that was intended that way, but I was like, that's a goofy thing to say.
I don't know what else you would mean by old swordsman.
I don't know what you mean. But, so Martin reveals that Elaine won't talk to him because she's so humiliated, because as Elaine's a huge fan of the show, all our friends listen to it, and Elaine's friends were calling her after the program to be like, is he talking about you? Oh, my goodness, and she's very embarrassed. So...
And Martin's like, people of his generation... they treat sex as a private thing. And that they think that that's a healthy way of looking at it. It's between you and the person you're doing it to.
Mm-hmm. And the person you're doing it to, which gets a big laugh. So they're not. Neither of them are quite woke or at the level where they understand the other. But they clearly there's another episode about Martin and Frasier not seeing eye to eye due to generational and cultural differences.
Right. But Frasier, I mean, I think by the end of the scene, he does sort of come to realize how he's hurting Martin, especially by sort of the fact that his actions have sort of caused him and Elaine to essentially break up. Mm-hmm. So he's resolved to do something about it in true Frasier fashion. Yeah. He goes on his radio program to make an appeal to Elaine directly. But first he has a caller by the name of Al, who is played by Henry Mancini.
Henry Mancini.
Who is a famous composer, did music for many movies, and he did the Pink Panther thing. That's probably his most famous piece of. It's one of his most famous pieces of music. You know,
I'm familiar with the Pink Panther. Don't patronize me, Adam.
Okay, well, you've seen the Steve Martin Pink Panther movie.
I've seen the original Pink Panther starring Steve Martin. I'm very familiar. Yes.
So yeah, it's him. He's calling in and he's playing a man who hates the sound of his own voice.
He's not a fan of his own voice.
And basically, Frasier and Roz don't listen to this man the entire time. Again, I think this is an example of Frasier and Roz having fun with each other and sort of bonding during the radio program. Basically, there's a bit of physical comedy where he's like, Frasier's, using a back scratcher, and then he puts it up his sleeve and pretends like the back scratcher's his hand. Yeah. And they're doing him and Roz just have a big old laugh.
Some solid prop comedy where Frasier is like, this back scratcher is my hand. I'm using it to scratch my armpit. And then Roz, who's eating Chinese food, is like, oh, these chopsticks are my teeth, and I'm a walrus. And it just kind of goes back and forth in that fashion.
All while this very depressed-sounding man is calling for them
about how much he hates the sound of his own voice, including his internal monologue in the sound of his own voice. And he called his next-door neighbor to record his voice message, his voicemail outbox. But he doesn't like his neighbor's voice either. It's just better than his, which just a rough spot to be in. Not that he gets a lot of calls, he says.
Right, and then by the time Frasier kind of steps back to the call, he just keep doing what you're doing and everything will work out fine. That's his advice to this guy. Doesn't give any sort of specific addresses any specific points that he was too busy playing with the back scratcher. Mm-hmm. So it's at this point that he begins to make his plea over the air to Elaine. Mm. I'm checking to see if that's actually her name. I've already forgotten.
It's Elaine. Elaine Morris from 1412.
So he makes his plea to Elaine, that to come back and that he's sorry for talking about her and Martin over the air, and Martin really misses her, and they started playing Moon River, which is also written by Henry Mancini,
composed by Henry Mancini, and from the film Breakfast at Tiffany's, which as you'll recall is starring Mickey Rooney as an Asian stereotype. So it's something that Bulldog might get into, since he called back to a couple episodes ago.
So he makes this plea over the air to Elaine. And we cut to later Frasier's apartment. I guess I should mention that. I guess he asks Elaine to dinner, 8:00 at their apartment, so her and Martin can reconcile. So we cut to later at the apartment. They're preparing the dinner for Martin and Elaine. They're not even sure really if Elaine is going to show up. Martin is very skeptical that she even heard Frasier's message, but Frasier is hopeful. Yeah. And there's a ring at the door. Mm-hmm. So they figure it must be Elaine. So Frasier goes to answer the door, and there's just a whole bunch of people outside of Frasier's apartment door.
And this is where we sort of reveal another thing that I guess Frasier is just now learning about being a radio personality, where you shouldn't say, hey, come to my place at this time, because crazies that listen to your program will come at that time and see what happens. And Frasier doesn't have, like, a bodyguard or anything. So he opens the door.
Specifically, like, the people in your building that apparently also listen to your show.
He's got
and it's
Yeah.
Could this be somewhat penance for telling a bunch of school children to wait outside Elijah's Woods house for him to come out?
It's sort of a theming, like the beginning stanza and the end stanza met. I think you're right. I think that does sort of, like, yeah, he doesn't have anywhere to go except into the elevator. We're getting there. So,
well, one thing I want to say real quick, among the people outside of Frasier's apartment is apparently their doorman.
Yes.
The guy who waits outside the building. Yeah,
played by Tony Colbert.
You know, right. And he makes some comments about, like, Frasier. I'm trying to find it in the script where he says it, but he basically says, "Oh, shouldn't you be watching the door?" And Tony's like, "Oh, don't worry, we're locked in."
Yeah, we're locked in.
If we're locked in, if he's locked the building, then how is Elaine supposed to get in? Because Elaine
is in 1412. She also lives in
I've already answered my own question.
There we go. We found it. We figured it out.
I found that I just logicked it out. So moving on. Yes, Elaine gets there and she sees, of course, all the people waiting for her to arrive, and she gets spooked. But Frasier drags Martin and himself into the elevator with her so they can kind of have a heart-to-heart in private, or somewhat private since Frasier's still there.
Yeah.
And they make him turn around. So, which he can still hear them. like it's
not it's sort of a matter of eliminating him from the conversation. I think it's less about him hearing it and more that he doesn't get to talk, I think, is the point.
Right. So yeah, Martin kind of spills. Martin is not the type of character who often sort of speaks his emotions. He's not. He doesn't talk about his feelings a lot, but he talks to Elaine, and he wishes that they could get back together, and he doesn't want, what they have together to be ruined by just a stupid thing. So Elaine hears this, and she decides to give Martin another chance. So
she gives Martin and his warm toes a chance.
Right? Yeah. No, he mentions that he has warm toes, and that conjures up some images that we're not gonna. We'll leave it to your own imagination.
The elevator goes back to the 19th floor. They come out. The people that have gathered outside of Frasier's home cheer, and then Martin and Elaine go back inside. Meanwhile, Daphne and Frasier decide to give them some space, an opportunity to sort of have a romantic evening. And there's a brief moment where Frasier and Daphne are talking about it's ironic that my 63-year-old father with a bum hip is about to have a romantic evening, while the two of us, man and woman, both attractive and eligible and in the prime of our lives, have nothing to do on Saturday. And Daphne, for a moment, is like, the answer might be right under our noses, and then Frasier says yes. And then Daphne is like, you go get the washing machines, I'll get the laundry. And that is...
Yeah, there's sort of a pregnant pause before that, where
there is a lot of
tension. That maybe there's going to be something between Frasier and Daphne,
which would break Niles' heart. Just as poor.
It would destroy Niles.
Oh, Niles would never emotionally.
He would kill everybody in that building with
his psychic powers. Yes, absolutely. He would never. That would be the moment where it would be disastrous.
So yeah, but she's talking about doing laundry, guys.
Yeah.
She's not talking about having a relationship with Frasier.
Doing some laundry
and that's
stuff.
The end.
That's the end of the episode.
That's the end. So, we got a funny episode. Thank God, because we kind of needed one, because we were getting kind of depressed.
Yep.
But this is a solid episode. Wes, your thoughts?
Fun. Was very fun. I feel... Okay, so here's the thing. I understand that it might be a lack of culture, or it might be just because I have a favorite at this point, but my two notes are, I loved this episode, I thought it was really funny, and I wish there was more Niles in this episode. This episode is very funny, and also, any scene with Niles just makes me wish there was a little bit more Niles. Not too much, I don't need like a whole Niles spin-off, but maybe I do, but that doesn't have to be what Frasier is. I just enjoy whenever I do see him, and I think he did great. I did enjoy the comedy of Kelsey Grammer. I thought he really shined in the scene with all the innuendo, and there was a joke that I didn't just enjoy Banger Dad, but that was I did enjoy how that was set. Like, it was a lot of silly, quick innuendo at the front, and then Banger Dad played off the thing that they'd set up at the beginning. I thought that was clever. And I also liked the reveal, because they made it seem like, oh, Frasier's fixed everything with the radio show, and I like that it hadn't quite fixed everything, because he still has a massive listenership in his own building, and it added a wrinkle that Martin himself had to get over. I thought this was a very well-produced, well-thought-out episode.
I agree. And I will say this about, since you brought up Niles. Niles is kind of, again, having seen all the episodes of Frasier, Niles is basically the breakout character of this series. He is the Steve Urkel, if you will, of the show.
Kelsey Grammer is definitely the Reginald VelJohnson, where he's like, this is supposed to be a show about my family and, like, family drama, and then here comes this fucking wacky inventor neighbor, Niles, and he wins the love and the admiration of the American people.
So yeah, I mean, there is plenty of Niles still to come, and I can't wait for that personally, because I love Niles. Yeah. But yes, that was the episode. Our next episode, Can't Buy Me Love.
You can't do it. You can't buy me love.
You can in fact not buy me. Well, actually, that's what the episode's about. Martin convinces Frasier and Bulldog to offer themselves in a bachelor auction for charity. Both men end up with rather surprising results.
Oh my goodness! How very exciting!
Or dates. I didn't read that properly.
No.
But yes, it's going to be another fun episode. Another hopefully humorous episode where both Bulldog and Frasier go on a date. So can't wait for that. We're going to get more Bulldog. We're going to get more Niles, hopefully, and it'll be a fun time just to be had by all.
Yep. I for one, can't wait.
All right. Well, that is going to be our episode, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Wes, for joining me.
You know it.
And you all have a good night. The Frasier on Frasier podcast wishes to thank KACL780.net for providing episode transcripts and Ronald O'Connell for providing our theme song, Frasier MIDI.